So welcome to the Patreon special of the Will I Vike It podcast. I'm back with Patrick Robinson from episode 9. And Patrick's going to answer a few bonus questions just for the Patreon. So welcome back.
Happy to be back on the podcast.
All right. So yeah, as I said to you before, don't remember my own questions. They're that new. So get them loaded in my brain. Okay. So first up is, what's the worst food you've ever eaten?
So food's the tricky one. I'm going to answer with drink because I have a very good answer for that. So back in lockdown, I attempted to brew my own mead. It all went.
I see where this is going.
Horribly wrong. I'm sure you've heard this a lot. I've heard this a lot. I'm sure a lot of people have attempted to make mead. You think it's very simple, and I think I don't know where I went wrong, but at one stage it was tasting perfect. And then I came back to it probably about a month later, opened it up, and it was the worst thing. Even the smell, I could tell that immediately something had gone wrong. And I don't know if it was some kind of infection. I'm sure Craig will tell me more on this. But it was so unbelievably horrible. It's hard to describe the flavour. Sort of like some leaves, like it was a very kind of earthy, bitter,
I reckon a mold. Some kind of mold infection, I reckon. If it's an earthy,
that kind of earthy taste, like when you taste bread that's gone off, like that kind of like weird, kind of barky, earthy taste. Really, very, very unpleasant. And I went outside, and even throwing it away was a horrible experience. It smelled terrible. Even pouring it down the sink was horrible. And in fact, I had 2 cartons of it, and this happened to both of them independently. I poured one away inside, and then thought, no, it's too bad to pour away outside. So I poured the rest of it away outside. But I've not ever attempted mead again since then. It's put me off.
Scared you up. I mean, we could try and problem solve it a little bit. I'm assuming you sterilized your kit and stuff before you started.
Yes, I thought I'd effectively sterilized it. I didn't use any modern sterilization. I washed it with detergent, and I heated like you do with, like I've done with chutney before. I heated the jars in the oven, and that's as far as I got. So I didn't use. I know some people use tablets and other things to.
Yeah, you can buy specialist cleaning powders and things, which is what I normally do. I mean, if you run it through the oven at a high enough temperature, same as doing jams and chutneys.
Maybe it wasn't high enough.
The other thing is, I mean, you can, there's so many little factors that come into it, so did you have like an airlock on top of the containers?
I had an airlock on top. My worry is during the beginning stage, and perhaps because I was too excited, kept going back to it and opening it up. Maybe I was just opening too much, and I perhaps wasn't being as thorough with washing my hands and everything when I was going and open, checking on it. That's my only thought. Or potentially when I was pouring it to sample it fairly early on, I was pouring it perhaps into a glass that wasn't sterilized or something, and it touched something on the lid. But that's my only thing. Or perhaps I took the lid off and put it down on something that wasn't 100% clean. But that's my only thought. I think it brings up interesting questions about how they were doing this in the Viking Age, because obviously it's much harder to sterilize everything and make sure that everything's clean. If they would have had similar issues, I guess.
I think they probably would have done. And certainly, like, people question whether they had vinegar, but if you store alcohol wrong, it turns to vinegar. So it makes sense at some point, by mistake, someone will have stored it, air will have got to it, and if air gets to the alcohol, it turns to vinegar. So there's another little thing that you can end up with, which sometimes get.
It wasn't vinegar. That would have been useful if it was vinegar, and perhaps it wouldn't have been such a pleasant experience, because I love vinegar. Anything vinegar flavored, I'm happy with. But it certainly wasn't vinegar.
But other than that, I couldn't really say without actually being there to smell it or but I mean, for most things, it's usually to do a sterilization.
Yes, I imagine it was just something. Perhaps I took the lid off and put it on an unclean, an unwiped. It's the only thing I can think of, but it was very, very unpleasant, is what I'll say.
Funnily enough, as a side, I've sort of got in my head the idea of doing just a video of myself, really, but just talking through, like, on YouTube or something, sort of potential problems people have. So like yourself, or whether it turns to vinegar or if it tastes like Marmite, and what you did and how you can improve it, and do it as just like a separate video just to help people out.
That could be really interesting. I did read a lot as I was doing it, and there's so much conflicting information about what you should do and what you shouldn't do, and what you should add and what you shouldn't add. So yeah, I did look a lot of information, but somehow something went wrong on the way.
So that's your worst ever.
That's the worst ever experience I've had with any food or drink.
Did you actually taste it? Because you were saying that it smelled so bad. You did.
It smelled bad, so I knew something was wrong immediately. But I thought I'll give it a taste, just in case, and that confirmed everything that I'd put up to that point. All right.
I think that could be a fairly common answer. I think asking this question going forward, I bet a lot of people will say some kind of homebrew.
Definitely. I'm sure a lot of people in the Real community, they've all had a go. And yeah, some people do not have the best experience.
So next up is, what's the most memorable meal you've ever eaten?
Memorable meal. So I have to veer away quite from a historical answer here.
That's fine, yeah.
I think with memorable, obviously a lot of it comes with the experience. The best kind of food experience I've had, and partly because I was so shocked at how brilliant it was, because how simple it was. This was when I was at university, and with a few friends, I went to Spain. And at the hostel, it wasn't actually any food that I had when I was out, or any food I'd had in a restaurant. It was at a hostel, and they served breakfast. And the breakfast was, I suppose, whatever the Spanish equivalent of ciabatta is. It was like a kind of crunchy, kind of fresh bread, which they serve with olive oil and sliced Spanish tomatoes, lots of salt and black pepper. And it was just the simplicity of it. I would never. I'm very used to my mum's cooking at home, or just kind of simple British food, but this was something. The idea of putting, for me, the idea of putting olive oil and bread, tomatoes, and that's it, was entirely foreign to me. And it was just so simple, but every ingredient was perfect. The olive oil was so fresh. The tomatoes, they weren't like some of the tomatoes you might buy in a British supermarket. They really tasted of something massive, big Seville tomatoes.
Yeah.
And fresh orange juice, coffee, just the perfect meal. So that was probably my most memorable food experience. But sometimes I think it's those most simple kind of meals where everything is perfect, where you think, oh, this is supposed to be. That was a really,
you can get that with like flatbreads and things, 2-ingredient flatbread, but because you cooked it, and like you say, the experience behind cooking it, and being outside with certain people, with their fire going, and
I think food can be an experience, and sometimes in the day of life you kind of lose that, where you think you're just cooking because you need food. Exactly, but yeah, it can be a whole experience when it's with people. And again, I think some of the experiences that I've had with filming the ATC when Craig's come along, those were also amazing food experiences where you try something that you haven't really tried before, but it's also the whole experience, the fire, the camaraderie, everything else that's going on can create a whole kind of amazing experience. And kind of, I think food can kind of bring people together on that, people that have very different interests, but everyone enjoys food. So yeah,
I think most people do.
Yeah.
I think so. There are people that just eat for the sake of it,
or people that have such different palates that it's sort of hard. When someone says they don't like chocolate or something like that, I find it hard. I cannot comprehend that. There's certain things. I don't like wine. I don't like this and that. And you think, I don't know how to relate to you on a human experience.
All right. So the last one we'll do is, I suppose to some people might be a bit morbid. So you've died, and your relatives are preparing your grave goods. What food and drink are you taking to feast in Valhalla?
Exciting. So I've died a horrible, violent death. I presume I've been murdered rather than died in battle, because I feel like that's more me. So
it doesn't have to be Viking related, it could be just for fun.
I'm on my way to Valhalla. So again, I think when you're asking kind of what the best food experience and what your favorite food is quite different. I'm very partial to a roast, and the king of the roast is the Christmas roast. So I think my relatives will be putting together a Christmas roast. So potatoes. In my family, it's not turkey, it's pheasant that we have, which is a really nice meat. Sounds very posh. It's actually just a kind of countrified thing. It's a little bit like duck. It's very flavorful. It can be a bit dry, less fatty can easily be dry, but it's a very flavorful meat with lots of gravy. So perhaps with a Mum's roast pheasant, potatoes, parsnips, and all the Christmas trimmings, I think they'd be laying out. I'm very much a savoury person, so probably a cheese board rather than dessert.
Yeah.
The cheddar, Stilton, all of that maybe laid at my feet.
What will you wash it down with?
Probably, I think it would have to be wine. It would have to be wine, a nice red wine.
Yeah.
I'm not like I do enjoy wine. I'm not a big wine connoisseur, so I don't have the palate to be able to pick out the best wine, but perhaps a Merlot or something like that, just a simple wine, something like that. Yeah, I think that's better. Washing it down with. Yeah, that's what they're packing off to Valhalla with.
Brilliant. I guess this is where we do the resurrection later. Bring it back for another episode.
Yeah, fantastic. Fantastic.
All right, well, thanks for coming on again.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
I'll catch you soon.
Yeah, I'm sure we will be. Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.